Hít sâu.
Ánh mắt không cầu xin.
The door opened and Vivian Morrow stopped the room. She crossed the threshold in a black gown, heels clicking, and said Alexander's name as if she could still claim it. Jealousy flared in his ribs like a physical heat. Alex felt it first as a pressure against his sternum, and then as a narrow, focused weight in his jaw. Servers froze with half-filled trays. A woman at a nearby table tilted her head. The city lights outside the floor to ceiling windows kept blinking, indifferent. Alex sat at a corner table, one arm resting on the polished wood, the other on the back of the chair where Lena had just covered her shoulders with a shawl. He noted the way his hand steadied and how his fingers curled around the stem of his glass. He himself to stay quiet. He checked the watch at his wrist and felt the leather strap like an anchor. This was his night with Lena. He had planned it, and Vivian's arrival made a problem visible in front of everyone. He had no right to be surprised. He had left a past that carried contracts, speeches, and a ring. Yet when Vivian his name, the sound cut through the ambient hum. The central problem stood exposed within the first moments. A former fiancée had walked in to reclaim what she insisted was still owed. That claim put a life Alex had been building at risk. He saw Lena look up. Her fingers tightened on the shawl. Alex understood that the room would watch how he answered. Alex rose before he could decide otherwise. He moved with the control he kept in boardrooms. He kept his voice even when he said, Vivian. He used her full name because habit and caution had taught him that exactness closed doors. Vivian smiled and let the smile extend too long. Alexander called her, she said, and the acknowledgement was a measurement. We need to talk about what you promised me. Her voice was precise like a stitched seam. People at neighboring tables turned their heads. The maître d'Anton drew nearer, professional and watchful. The first external event, Vivian's public claim, had landed. The evening went from private to public in a single step. Lena's response was small at first. She set her napkin down, stood, and tucked a curl behind her ear. Alex watched that motion, registering the way she used small gestures when she felt uncertain. He felt the first emotion shift, from tight jealousy to a controlled protectiveness. His mouth thinned. He moved to intercept before guest or gossip could widen the breach. Vivian, Alex again softer, this isn't the place. He kept his hand on the back of his chair so Lena could see his fingers. He wanted her to read steadiness there. Vivian's eyes swept the dining room, stopping at familiar faces and then slanting back to Alex. You walked away, Alexander. You can act like time erased an agreement. Servers hovered with chilled salads and open wine bottles. A sommelier, Luca, tightened his grip on a decanter and glanced at the kitchen. Everyone had a role now. Alex took a step toward the glass doors. He moved Vivian with a tightened courtesy the way a man leads a volatile board member to a private elevator. Let's step over here. He guided her to the window alcove. That action moved the conflict out of the middle of the room but did not diminish it. Lena stayed. She did not follow. In her place, the table looked suddenly small and exposed. Alex felt a second emotional shift. Protectiveness slid into concern for Lena's fragility. He watched her breathe. He noticed how her jaw worked when she tried to swallow a rapid sentence. Her shawl half unraveled from her shoulders on one side. He thought of all the quiet things she had done to close him off from panic after a deal collapsed. After nights when he had not slept. He thought of a small healed scar on her wrist and how she rubbed it when she was nervous. Those precise memories were the ones that had mattered to him in the months since she had helped him stop counting his losses and start sitting with his choices. In the alcove, Vivian produced a slim envelope. Alex's fingers tightened when he saw it. The envelope had a corporate letterhead. Vivian, you promised your name would not take our company without notice. This is simple paperwork. She held the envelope out like a fact. Alex's throat closed for a second. He took the envelope, and pinched it between thumb and forefinger. He did not open it there. He did not allow the smell of paper to pull him into argument. Instead he said, "Not here." "Not like this." He scanned the room for Anton. The maître d'Anton had receded into the background, but his posture said he was ready. A server hovering near Lena Meyer kept her hands folded as if she feared to break something. Lena stood then and walked toward the alcove. Her feet were steady. People watched the way she approached. She did not avoid Vivian's eyes. She stopped close enough to be part of the exchange, and then said, "Vivian, you have facts. We have witnesses. I'm Elena Morales. I am with Alexander tonight." Her voice did not shake. Vivian turned to face Lena with a measured stare. "Elena Morales," she repeated, as if testing the name on her tongue. "He promised what he promised long before you were here." The sentence was an accusation dressed in chronology. Names don't make promises true, Lena. They don't change what Alexander chose to do once he knew something different. She Alexander several times so everyone could track who she meant. Vivian's smile thinned. "Alexander, you once told me you'd never let reputation cloud a contract." She stepped closer. "You swore it." Her hand tapped the envelope. There was an exchange then that included 3 rapid, clashing lines. Alex answered first. "I told you what I believed was right then." Vivian shot back. "You left because it was easier. You left a ring and a speech, and you left accountability." Lena interjected. "Vivian, drop the theatrics. Tell us what you want." The conversation tightened like a string. Alex felt anger now sit below the surface of his control. The second emotion shift had happened. Controlled protectiveness had grown teeth. He leaned forward. "Vivian, if you have legal papers, present them with counsel," he said. "Don't make scenes at dinner." He used the formal request the way a man uses a polished tool. Vivian laughed softly, a sound that did not reach her eyes. "You always sound like a chairman when you try to be a lover, Alexander." The line landed and a few diners looked away. Anton stepped in with the practiced smile of a man trained to smooth crises. He offered a private room. He called a madam. "Perhaps the private dining room will suit you both." His tone was neutral and designed to move people out of the spotlight. Alex chose containment. He moved Vivian toward the private room instead of arguing in the open. He kept Lena at his table, watching for her reaction. At the threshold of the private room he paused and said, "I'll be back in a moment." Lena nodded. Her eyes met his. In that look he found a quiet question and an invitation. "Protect what we've started." The private room felt colder when the door closed. Vivian unbuttoned a glove and slipped out a folder with photographs inside, a dated certificate, a picture of a building that bore his company name, an email printout. She placed them on the table one by one as if she were assembling a case. Alex opened one photograph. It showed a younger version of himself standing beside Vivian in front of a charity gala banner. He remembered that night. The speech, the champagne, the way she had kissed him on stage after a public promise. He didn't like how precise those images felt in his hands. He set the photograph down and said, "Why now?" His voice had none of the museum calm he'd used earlier. Vivian's answer came like an inventory. "Because I've been patient, Alexander. But there are board members who think your move was theft. There are people who want restitution." She tapped the photograph. "I want what I am owed. I want you to honor an agreement." Her words were deliberate. Alex felt a cold realization. This wasn't a personal plea. It was pressure aimed at his reputation. The twist changed the stakes. This was not just an old lover asking for reconciliation. This was a maneuver that could cost him his hard-earned quiet. "You can file a claim, you can speak to my lawyer, you can do this outside a restaurant. But you cannot come here and threaten us with shadows of a past you polished and sold." He kept his jaw set. Vivian's expression changed only slightly. You forget the part where you signed in front of witnesses. Her hand moved to the folder and produced a page with signatures. She tapped a name in the corner. You signed, Alexander. The evidence hung in the air. Alex felt frustration and a quick, rational calculation. If this reached the press, Lena would be exposed. He imagined her hands shaking in private, trying to scrub the memory of this night from her skin. He imagined headline threads tying her name to his. He saw the second mid-chapter external event, the case file on the table. It shifted the conflict from argument to possible public consequence. Who else knows? He wanted to know the size of the threat in concrete terms. Vivian answered, naming a board member. She named a date and a meeting. She made the threat feel like an approaching train with a timetable. Alex's decision had to be quick and precise. Then let's talk to counsel. We'll arrange a proper meeting. Not here, not tonight. He tried to convert the crisis into procedure. Back at the dining room, Lena had not sat. She moved to the window and watched Alex through the glass. She tucked both hands into the shawl, securing it around her shoulders. Her face held a level look that Alex had come to rely on when decisions needed a steady witness. He felt relief at her presence, and then a small fear, relief that could turn to complacency. In the private room, Vivian leaned in and said, "You always protect her well, Alexander. Are you sure this is the woman you will choose when everyone's eyes are forward again?" The line was both a question and a challenge. "Alex, Vivian, this is not about theater or threats. It's about what we do now. I want to let you leverage a past promise into taking what I want to give." He spoke plainly. He put no flourish in his language. He used choices as a shield. Vivian's fingers drummed the tabletop. She then prove it. She tapped the folder again. "Prove you have changed your mind in a way that holds up." Her voice clipped. "Prove you are not merely hiding behind a new face." The accusation landed like a stone. Alex felt it, as if it left an imprint on the back of his hand. He stood. The room had condensed into the two of them, and that small table with its evidence. "I will face it with counsel. I will not." He paused. He could feel the weight of Lena waiting in the dining room. He cut the sentence short because his phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it. The message preview showed a flagged email from a board member's assistant. The assistant wanted an urgent clarification. Alex felt his chest tighten, as if something tightened across his ribs. That small notification was another external event, immediate and concrete. Vivian's eyes followed his hand. She smiled, but it did not reach curiosity. It reached calculation C. She said, "You still answer the clock of your responsibilities." She slid back her chair and smoothed her gown like a curtain being closed. Alex realized then that the problem had a new edge. This was less a reclaiming of romance than an orchestrated attempt to force him into a public negotiation. He thought of Lena and the delicate trust she had given him. He thought of the scar on her wrist and the way she hummed small notes when she was alone. He thought of how private the life he'd been building with her had been, how he had learned to speak without slides and spreadsheets. He left the private room with a decision that had weight. He would not allow the restaurant to become a battleground. He would not sign anything under pressure. He would call counsel and set a controlled meeting. He would return to Lena and choose to stand beside her, publicly. That choice would have consequences. He knew it. He also knew that failing to answer Vivian's paper would allow rumors, and rumors could accelerate into reputational damage. He walked back through the dining room. The lights reflected on the glass and made short, bright slashes across his overcoat. He saw Lena's eyes searching his face. He stopped and crouched slightly at the table so he could speak quietly without everyone overhearing. "Lena," he said, using her name like a promise. "I dealt with it. I'll set a meeting. I'm not signing anything tonight." He put his hand on the table so she could see the steady line of his fingers. Lena looked at the envelope he still held in his other hand. She breathed, then said, Alex, are you sure? Her voice had a softness that held a practical question. Alex answered, I'm sure I want tea. Let a past document define what we are building. His reply was short. Lena considered that. She glanced at Anton and the staff, then at Vivian, leaving a few steps away as she gathered her things. The restaurant murmured back into its rhythm. Vivian stormed to the entrance with a long, deliberate stride. She paused just inside the glass and turned. This isn't tea over, Alexander, she called. The words traveled across lacquered tables and polite dinners. Anton moved forward, ready to close down the disturbance. Maya, the server, offered napkins without looking at Alex. Luca retreated into the past to steady plates. Outside, a shadowed figure by the curb raised a phone. The man spoke into it in a low voice, then tapped the screen and gestured toward the restaurant door. The signal was small and deliberate. Inside, Alex watched Vivian's coat sweep the entry and felt something small and electric like a new danger. They left together into the city. Alex opened the car door for Lena and helped her inside. He kept the envelope closed on his lap. He felt the adrenaline ease into a low, controlled hum. He took one breath and then another. He knew the night had changed his options. He knew the fight from Vivian would follow them into council rooms and board agendas. Lena turned to him in the back seat. Was she right about signatures? She asked. Alex looked at her and said, she has a page. We will face it with lawyers. We will not let a show tonight make the decision for us. He named the plan plainly. Lena rested her head briefly against the leather and let out a short breath. Then let's go home and make lists, she said, as if practicality could be an anchor. As the car pulled away from the curb, a streetlight caught the silhouette of the man who had raised the phone. He put the device away and stepped into the shadow. Vivian's heels receded down the sidewalk. The city swallowed the sound. The evening had ended with a clear new stake. Someone had turned an old promise into a legal blade, and Alex and Lena would have to decide how to deflect it. The final concrete action came as the car merged into traffic and Alex's phone buzzed again with a calendar invite titled Board Clarification. He pressed his thumb over the screen, opened the invite, and closed the calendar without answering. He would call counsel in the morning. Lena would protect what they started tonight by being public and precise. She squeezed his fingers where they rested on the envelope. He felt the pressure return, but steadier now. The night had ended on a clear situational beat. A calendar invite arrived, and a pair of hands closed around a decision. Vivian stayed a step ahead of the kitchen door, her heel tapping once against linoleum as she pushed a folded photograph into Elena Moral's hand without a word. Jealousy burned under Alexander Calder's ribs the moment he saw Lena's fingers close over the paper. The feeling sent his jaw tight and his mouth dry. He moved before he decided, rising from the corner table and crossing the dining room with deliberate steps toward the service corridor. The conflict was immediate. A polished woman had just tried to place a private weapon in front of his companion. That was the problem, plain and dangerous. Alex kept his voice low when he reached the corridor. Vivian. He used her name like a ticket he had no intention of reopening. He sounded controlled and close. He reached for Elena's hand to pull her back into the light. Elena let him touch her wrist but did not pull away. She turned her palm so Alex could see the photograph, and the small image punched the air between them. The photograph was a studio engagement portrait. Vivian's laugh caught mid-breathe, Alex in a tuxedo with his arm around her waist, both younger, both posed in a way that belonged to a different life. Alex's first shift in feeling was hot suspicion. He felt suspicion as a tangible tightening in his hands. He thought of the foyer last chapter, when the door had opened and Vivian stopped the room. That memory pushed against him now, precise and sharp, not vague. He stepped forward to intercept before anyone else could notice. You bring trouble, Alex. He kept the words clipped and factual. Vivian's face did not change at the accusation. She looked at him as if she were reading an old, unpaid in voice. Vivian tucked her chin. Alexander, you always forget how things look when you try to act noble. Alina's thumb brushed the photograph, and then folded it back once, careful. Her fingers trembled a small, readable motion. Alex watched that motion and felt a new shift. Protectiveness replacing suspicion. He did not yet trust his own assessment of motive, but he would not let Vivian set the terms. He stepped so his body was between Vivian and Elena. A waiter hesitated by the corridor's threshold, eyes darting. An external event arrived. Julian, the maitre d', appeared with a controlled smile and an offer to seat anyone else away from the corner. The arrival had the immediate effect of splitting attention back to the dining room. Guests shifted, forks paused, and the restaurant leaned into the disturbance. Alex used the pause to speak quietly to Elena. Show me later. Alex, not here. His tone was directive but steady. Elena nodded once. She trusted him enough to defer, and that quiet agreement steadied him. He felt the second emotion shift then, from protective to a careful, measured anger aimed at Vivian rather than at himself. Vivian lifted a polished hand. Alexander, the camera doesn't lie. People deserve to know who you choose to sit with now. Her words were a blade wrapped in silk. She turned them outward toward the other patrons, and the restaurant's small, private audience shifted their attention again. Glass chimed somewhere. A woman at a neighboring table murmured, and Alex could hear the precise drop of a chair pulling back. Someone at the curb answered a signal. Damien, Vivian's handler, stepped through the entrance, a folded note in his fingers. He did not come alone. Through the front door, a photographer who had waited like a predator clicked a flash that the maitre d' tried to shield. The flash was an external escalation and a new event. A set of old engagement photos appeared suddenly in the foyer, already circulating. A man shouted something indistinct. Alex moved to block the view of Elena's face as photographers pushed forward. Enough. Alex, raising his voice so the words cut through the room. He did not shout angrily. He imposed a new demand. Julian, handle your door. Move them back. Julian nodded and stepped into the foyer. He used a single motion to shepherd the photographer off the threshold and into a side alley. That choice by Julian shifted the outcome. It reduced the immediate spectacle. Vivian's lips thinned. She had expected the spectacle. Alex saw it in the small, practiced set of her jaw. He also saw how she used the photograph as leverage. When she had said Alexander's name in the dining room earlier, she had done more than enter a room. She had intended to remind the crowd what he once promised. Alex remembered the opening of the previous chapter, the way Vivian caused every head to turn when the door opened, and the memory sharpened his resolve rather than distracting him. Behind the disrupted pattern of appetizers and murmurs, Elena moved. She walked back to their table instead of shrinking. She folded the photograph flat and placed it on the corner of the table as if it were a record that required a response. Her action was an external detail that changed the atmosphere. She would not be pushed out. Alex watched her place the paper and felt another shift, this time toward quiet respect and a careful, protective affection. He reached for her hand and left it there, palm to palm, unspoken. He kept his voice low. You stay here with me, Elena. No one makes this your fight without you saying so. He used her full name to anchor the moment. Elena met his eyes. Alex, I saw it. I know it means something to her, but it doesn't change us if you don't let it. Her voice was steady. She did not beg. She folded her fingers into his and squeezed once. That squeeze calmed him for a breath and reminded him why he had chosen to sit with her that evening. The photographer pushed for one last shot near the entrance. Damien handed Vivian a small stack of printed images and a note. Vivian flicked through them with the same slow precision she used to throw a glass onto ice. Alex's next move was immediate. He followed Vivian into the foyer and then into a staff hallway, intent on making the confrontation private. The hallway was narrow and smelled faintly of cleaning oil and lemon. Alex could see the back of Vivian's heels as she hesitated outside the loading door. He closed the distance and said, "Don't drag this into my company meetings, Vivian." Her reply was both a promise and a threat. "Protecting her will cost you, Alexander. I can make sure every board member sees what your past looks like." She tapped the printed photos. "Or you can walk away from her and keep the company clean." He felt anger prick the base of his neck. He kept his hands at his sides. His next emotion was a tight calculation, fear of reputational damage mixed with a fierce refusal to be ordered away from what mattered to him now. "You threaten my business to get me back." "That's a small, Vivian. You're above petty stunts, act like it." He spoke the truth as a weapon. Vivian smiled with no warmth. "Peter at the foundation remembers the signed letter. He is a good friend. Consider this an old ledger reopened, the mention of a specific person, and a document shifted stakes into concrete territory." This was not rumor. She offered a named route to damage. Alex's chest tightened because the threat was real and could move in the world of contracts and boardrooms. Alexander hardened. He made a choice with his feet, not with a speech. He grabbed Vivian's wrist and steered her out of the hallway and down a service staircase. He did not shout. His grip was firm. He wanted answers, not theater. They reached the wine cellar through a back door, the air cooler and the lights dimmer. Alex closed the heavy door behind them. Wine racks rose like an organized wall. The space was small, private, and it changed the confrontation from public humiliation to focused interrogation. Alex's voice lowered. "Why now? Why bring this up here?" His question was direct and required specifics. Vivian put her hands on the nearest wine rack as if that steadied her. "Because you walking away from me looked like cowardice. Because the world must know who you left for comfort. Because I want what I was promised," she each clause plainly. Alex heard the list as motives rather than as poetic grievances. "You want me to remember a promise you broke," Alex replied. "You want to weaponize the past." His words were not rhetorical. He needed a fact in return. Was there a signed agreement, a contract, a document? She had claimed an old letter. He demanded to know the details. Vivian's eyes glinted. "Not everyone keeps copies of what they signed. Some things live in other people's hands." She tapped the photos. "Damien will deliver what he must. You will see it in the right newsroom. Or you will make the easier choice and step away from whatever this new arrangement is." The cellar felt narrower. Alex felt fear creep in, but he turned it outward into options. He did not plead. Who is Damien? Who gives him those photos? He needed the chain of custody, a way to neutralize the threat. Vivian answered with a small smile. "I find allies when I need them. You should know how I work, Alexander." She sounded certain because this was her familiar method. Leverage exposure and the theatrical reveal. They argued tightly for a few rapid exchanges, each line clipped and measured. Alex's voice dropped to a near, harsh whisper. "Vivian, don't I mistake me. I will not let you use him to hurt Lena. I want tea. If you publish anything, I will bankrupt the channels that run it and make sure the people who disseminate it regret the day they took your money." He kept his threats specific, leaning on his business muscle rather than sentiment. Vivian flicked her hand. "Threats, Alexander. That's all you offer now?" She stepped back, keeping the space between them. "Or will you sign another promise? Will you be the man the board can predict again?" The argument tightened. Alex felt his emotions sharpen. Jealousy first, protectiveness second, then a cold calculation to control damage. He realized a new shift as the confrontation reached its peak, clarity about consequence. He would not be blackmailed into a choice between reputation and a woman who had been honest with him. He would not let Vivian decide his life for him. Without another word, Alex turned and opened the cellar door. He left Vivian there with the wine and the cool concrete taste in the air. He walked back toward the dining room, each step measured. He had not resolved the threat, but he had forced the confrontation into a place where he could gather allies. When he returned to the table, Alina was waiting with Julian at the edge of the restaurant. The room contracted now into a smaller set of faces. Julian moved to close the front doors and offered to escort any remaining persistent photographers away. He had already spoken to the restaurant owner and chosen discretion. The choice by Julian shifted the public damage into a smaller, manageable ripple. Elena rose and stood beside Alex. She did not say she trusted him. She showed it by the way she set her hand on his back as they walked to the terrace door. The action changed the power balance. Vivian could throw photographs into the world, but Alex and Elena could choose how to face them. As they stepped onto the rooftop, a cold wind pushed at Elena's shawl. The city lights glittered. Alex felt the last shift of the night, from threat response to a quiet plan. On the terrace, Alex outlined practical steps. I will call legal. I will call parked, or I will talk to the board first thing tomorrow. He kept his voice precise. Elena listened and then offered one simple sentence. We tell the truth as we know it, Alex. We do not let them make us into strangers again. Her voice had the same earnestness that had first drawn him in. He repeated her line back to himself in his head as if testing it for soundness. They made decisions together. They agreed to keep friends close and to let Julian control immediate access to the restaurant. They agreed Elena would not go alone to work events and that Alex would personally oversee any documents Vivian claimed to hold. Each choice felt like a brick in a plan. External events had arrived repeatedly through the chapter, and now they chose responses that changed outcomes. Late on the terrace, Alex felt the remainder of his jealousy evaporate into action. He did not romanticize the feeling, he used it. He tapped his watch twice and then said, "Call me tomorrow at 9. We'll start with Damien's contact list and follow the money." He used time as a way to anchor the fight. Elena pressed a fingertip to his hand. Alex, she used his name softly, no theatrics. We face it together. The statement was small and concrete, and it steadied him. They heard a knock at the rooftop door. Julian stepped out, his face serious. There is a man below asking for Mr. Calder. He says he has information. The knock was the final external beat. The chapter concluded with that knock and the decision that followed. Alex reached for his coat and then looked at Elena. He closed his fingers around the photograph he had taken from the table earlier and slid it into his pocket. He left the terrace with Julian, toward the stairs, toward the man who claimed he had information, and toward a sequence that would not stop with words, but required action. The chapter ends on that concrete beat. A knock, a man waiting below, and Alex stepping down to meet the next visible threat. Vivian stepped onto the terrace and said, "Alexander, you left me a promise. You will not ignore it now." The sentence landed like a bruise against the city light. Jealousy tightened Alex's chest the way a fist closes around a shirt, sharp, hot, immediate, and he pushed himself from the railing where he'd been looking at the skyline. He had not expected her to come up here. He had not expected her to say his name that way. He closed the distance in 3 long strides. Vivian, Alexander Calder, voice steady enough to be heard by the diners below. He held the railing behind him to keep his hands visible. The rooftop furniture scraped as a waiter backed away. He remembered the black gown that had stopped a room last time. He remembered a photograph shoved into Lena's fingers, a printed edge still creased. That photograph had been the first small wound. Now Vivian had turned it into a blade. Vivian's face showed no apology. She folded her arms and let the city lights outline her profile. "You promised things, Alexander," she said. "There are signatures. There are witnesses. You can pretend those papers don't exist." Her voice carried the practiced rhythm of someone who had rehearsed this moment in 1,000 mirrored rooms. Her heels clicked once on the terrace stone. Alex felt doubt press behind his eyes. Doubt about what? About the papers, about the distance he had allowed between himself and Lena. He moved his jaw, tasting iron. He had hidden a part of his past to protect a life he had not yet learned to call his. He had thought he could keep reputation and truth separate. Vivian had come to force them into the same room. Lena's name rose in his mouth before he realized he had spoken it aloud. "Lena isn't a shield," he said. "She's not a footnote in whatever you think we owe you." His tone sharpened, and the man in the tailored coat across the terrace narrowed his shoulders the way someone prepares to take a hit and not flinch. Vivian smiled like she was hearing something she liked. "You make me sound small, Alexander. You always did, but small things collect: contracts, photographs, witnesses. I have all three." She stepped closer until the space between them was down to a slow, dangerous breath. From the terrace stairs Alina ran up, hair loosening from its smooth knot, a shawl slipping off one shoulder. She had heard Vivian's voice from inside the restaurant. She did not wait for permission. Vivian. Elena when she reached them, voice even. Her hands were clasped together, knuckles white under linen. "Don't make this about threats. If you have something, present it properly." She kept her eyes on Vivian, then flicked a glance to Alex. The glance asked for instruction and gave him something steadier than argument. Presence. Vivian turned to look at Elena as if inspecting a newly displayed painting. "Lena," she said, "the name like a scale. You were given one of my photographs last night. Remember, you took it like a child taking candy. You should be careful with other people's things." She held up a folded envelope stamped with the restaurant logo and let it lie on the palm of her hand like a dare. A manager from the dining room appeared at the terrace doorway. Breath-quick mees. "Moro, sir, we should—" "Rosa," the restaurant manager said. She wore the standard black, but her voice held a clear warning. "Cameras are near." She had seen Vivian pause near the kitchen door earlier that night. Rosa referenced something Alex already feared. Her arrival turned private accusation into potential spectacle. Alex saw the press cluster through the glass, waiting beyond the mezzanine. He felt the old calculation take shape. Contain or surrender. Prior decisions had once been another person's job. Now Martin Quinn, his prayer manager, stepped into the doorway beside Rosa, blazer tighter than the moment required. "Alexander, Martin, low and quick." She coordinated a camera feed. "If this goes outside, it becomes a story. We need a statement or a retraction." Martin's fingers found his phone and fumbled for the company folder. Vivian's mouth curved. "I intend to make a statement," she replied. "I intend to make it loud enough that people remember the promises you left unpaid." She produced the signed paper then, a page that caught the terrace light with the exacting edge of ink. Alex's stomach tightened at the sight of his signature, dated and deliberate. He had signed a paper once, long ago, in a place he had not fully been awake. He had another memory. A photograph Vivian had shoved into Lena's hand. The paper and the photograph now lay between them like evidence and accusation. Alex's first response was not a speech. It was a small, precise action. He took off his overcoat and laid it across the back of a terrace chair. He did this to anchor himself, to order movement, when emotion threatened to topple him. The motion looked calm. Inside, his thoughts darted for explanations, for the ledger that would erase this claim. He sent Martin a look that meant, "Get the files." Hector Diaz, the restaurant's security chief, moved toward the terrace, palms open to show no weapon. "Sir, we can escort Mies. Moro downstairs if you prefer," he offered. His voice was practiced for confrontation. Cameras might see an escort. Cameras might prefer a scene. Alex's fingers tightened a fraction on the stone railing. Lena stepped forward. Her chin lifted. "You brought paper and a photograph," she said. "You gave me a photograph in the kitchen. You thought it would unsettle me." "It didn't." She put one hand over the small, healed scar at her wrist, as if remembering the night that scar had been shaped. Her voice did not tremble. "If you want something, speak plainly. If you want money or apology or status, say it." "Don T threatened my life." The last part was not melodramatic. It was practical and fierce. Vivian's lips thinned. "Lena, say what you like. The photograph says more. The signature says more. People see ink and they form a story. People assume what they prefer. She tapped the folded envelope with a manicured finger. And maybe Alexander prefers them to assume. She looked at Alex then. And for the first time in the exchange her voice faltered a fraction. A crack appeared in Vivian's performance. Alex noticed it the way a surgeon notices a hairline fracture. The doubt in Alex's head shifted into calculation. He saw an opportunity. A ledger, an old email thread, a notarized correction hidden in a corporate file he had sworn to keep private. He had asked Martin to keep some documents sealed because exposure would harm more than one person. He had made a choice then, choice born of shame and protection, and that choice had a cost now. An external sound interrupted them. The clack of a camera shutter from the mezzanine below. Phones lifted. A soft murmur rose. The air around them snapped into attention. Alex's pulse accelerated not from fear, but from the pressure of a decision. He called Martin's name and Martin moved, fingers working the phone screen. Downstairs, a journalist's voice asked, "Is there a statement?" The question threaded up through the terrace door. Someone in the restaurant opened the glass to hear better. Alex felt the room constrict around the doorway. He could walk downstairs and take the accusation into the open. He could try to negotiate privately and risk Vivian leaking the documents. Both options carried harm. Vivian leaned in, close enough that Alex could see a faint, practiced tremor at the corner of her left eye. "Choose, Alexander," she said. "Choose who you protect." She held the photograph up like a talisman. The photograph unfolded under the terrace light. A younger Alex in a half-empty room, arm around someone whose face Vivian obscured with a sleeve. A printed date along the bottom. Lena's fingers had held the photo before. Alex remembered the moment. Lena had stilled, then tucked the picture inside her shawl without looking at it twice. Now Vivian wanted to make that ghost count. Alex made a decision that looked small but that carried weight. He returned to the dining room, the terrace door clicking behind him. The restaurant felt smaller when he walked in with his coat in hand. Every eye turned. He found the table where they had been seated and signaled Rosa and Martin to come closer. The diners quieted, sensing that something official would follow. Vivian followed, detecting the shift. Lena remained on the terrace for a second, then descended the steps with her hands clasped, steady. She moved to Alex's side and stood almost within reach. Her presence was not a show of possession, but a practical reinforcement. Alex felt steadier with her there. In the dining room, with the city visible through the floor, to ceiling windows, Alex put the signed page Vivian had shown on the table and then opened his palm to a different, carefully folded envelope. He slid it across in a motion that was both deliberate and theatrical. Martin and Rosa leaned in. The servers paused mid-step. "Vivian, Alex, this is a document you didn't expect to see. It shows a correction filed and notarized after the date on that paper. It shows that the earlier agreement you reference was amended. I never intended this to get out because the correction involved private settlements that would hurt someone else I wanted to protect." He looked at her directly. "I'm not denying the signature. I'm denying the claim you plan to make as a weapon." His voice had the steady cut of someone who had rehearsed a defense and then chosen to be honest about it. Vivian's eyes flicked to the correction and then narrowed. "You kept that private because you thought you could bury it," she said. "You think a piece of paper can erase what you did. But people remember actions more than corrections." Her hands tightened on her clutch. "You don't get to rewrite people's memories." Her tone invited witnesses. Martin spoke now, low and efficient. "We will release a clear statement with the corrected paperwork and a notarized timeline. We will make the record show the amendment and explain the context." He looked at Alex, then at Vivian. "Mems. Moreau, if you proceed with a public allegation that misrepresents these facts, there will be counter-evidence and witness testimony. We prefer not to make this a courtroom on the mezzanine, but we will defend the factual record." His words were practical. They named a consequence. Vivian laughed once. Sharp, you will defend with words and papers, she said. People like stories more than documents, Martin. People like the old scenes. They want scandal. She turned to the restaurant crowd. I will tell my side, and I will let others decide which version fits their taste. Her voice raised, and cameras clicked nearer. Rosa stepped forward. Ms. Moreau, this is private property. If you are planning to make a public statement that disrupts our service, we will ask you to leave until the matter is handled offline. Her voice did not tremble. Complimented by Hector's presence at the back, Rosa's stance turned Vivian's threat into a choice between staying and being escorted or leaving and broadcasting. Vivian's jaw worked. She looked at Alex as if deciding whether to make a spectacle of his life. The moment hung. Then she did something Alex had not expected. She unfolded the photograph and held it out. Fine, she said. If you want to quiet this with paperwork, sign here now. Sign that you accept a settlement again. Or I go public. She slid a pen across the table with the casual menace of someone used to getting signatures. There was a beat where Lena watched the pen slide, and the dining room held its breath. Alex's fingers brushed his watch. He could sign to make the immediate chaos vanish. He could sign and promise relief. But he had chosen Lena. He wanted to protect her not with silence but with a clean, if costly, truth. Alex stood and reached for the pen, not to sign. He set his palm on top of the photograph and pushed it back toward Vivian. He spoke with a voice that gathered what he had been through. No more signatures to erase things that happened. He said, no more payments to buy silence. If you file a claim that misstates facts, we will answer. But I will not rewrite what people remember with my signature again. His words were not theatrical. They were a boundary. Vivian's expression changed like a stage light shifting. She had expected negotiation. She had expected him to fold. She had not expected refusal. For the first time that night, Alex saw confusion in her practiced control. Her fingers fiddled with the pen, then she snapped it closed. You leave me no choice, she said softly. An assistant in the restaurant had already sent a note to a legal contact. Cameras leaned forward. Vivian stood and swept back toward the terrace door. This isn't over, she said to Alex. You will be sorry. She turned and left through the glass. Heels clicking with the same exact tempo she had used to enter earlier chapters. Her departure left a silence that tasted like ash. Outside, on the service corridor at the back of the kitchen, Lena intercepted Vivian before she reached the elevator. The corridor smelled of dish soap and hot metal. Pipes vibrated nearby. Here the confrontation narrowed to two women and one strip of fluorescent light. Vivian, Lena, steady. She did not raise her voice. Why are you doing this? Her hands were unclasped now, exposed. What do you want from him that you can take from the past? Lena's voice showed no accusation, only demand for a reason. Vivian turned, the kutcher gown brushing against metal. I want what I was promised, she replied. I want recognition. I want to be seen as having mattered. You were the interruption, Elena. The name came out with a casual cruelty. Lena inhaled, then stepped closer. You are asking to be seen at the cost of another woman's life. That's what this is. You will make a scene and humiliate me, and then you will expect me to disappear. I want tea. She banged a hand once against a service door to punctuate the sentence. The sound echoed down the corridor. Vivian's face changed. Alex could not hear their words from the dining room, but he watched Lena descend the stairs and then follow Vivian as security cleared the doorway. He saw Lena put her hand gently on Vivian's arm for a second, an odd human contact, and then release it. It was a choice to stand and not to cower. Back in the dining room, conversation had returned to careful clinking of silverware, but the air carried a new edge. Alex moved through it with the measure of a man carrying both resolve and tiredness. He had made a public rejection of Vivian's demand. He had refused to sign away truth for quiet. That refusal would cost something. Rosa and Martin coordinated the release of documents in a way that would make the timeline clear. A press release with notarized correction, witness statements from 2 corporate attorneys, and a recorded date of the amendment. Martin trusted the record to hold when words alone would not. Alex watched him work and felt gratitude lace with guilt. Both were precise and human. Outside, a journalist's live feed began to run. Vivian had chosen the option that ensured notice. She had walked through the restaurant doors and given a short, prepared statement to the camera. A claim, a hint at wrongdoing, a single-pointed mention of Alex's name. The word spread like ink on glass. Phones lit across the room. Alex did not reply to the first feed. He waited until Rosa had the volume down. Then he walked out onto the small mezzanine and spoke plainly into a camera in a way that stripped spectacle of its romance. "Here are the facts," he said. He read the correction, the notarized amendment, and then named 3 witnesses who could confirm the timeline. He did not plead. He did not flare. His voice carried the weight of someone who had learned to answer instead of to hide. After the statement, some people in the dining room clapped, polite but forced. Vivian's team was outside. They would amplify their claim regardless. The night would not close quietly. Alex felt the pivot of the world beneath his feet, and then steadied it by taking a single, concrete step. He asked Rosa to lock the terrace doors for a few minutes, and then led Lena up the private stairs. On the rooftop terrace afterward, the city hummed below. The radiation of flashbulbs had eased into the normal distant glow. Vivian's car had left. The document released would circulate and then be parsed. The photograph would be scanned and magnified on opinion pages. There would be articles. There would be commentary. But Alex and Lena were here now, 2 figures under a wash of gold and teal light. Lena sat across from Alex, the shawl across her knees. Her hands trembled twice, then stilled. "You didn't sign anything," she said. "You could have made it stop." Her voice had a crack of strain. Alex set both hands on the table. His fingers brushed the edge of the envelope with the notarized correction. "I could have paid to stop it," he said. "I chose not to. I wanted the record to be honest. I don't want to build a life on erasing people." He looked at her. "I want the consequences, if they come, to be ours together." His eyes searched her face for an answer. There was a shift in Lena then that Alex registered as clarity. She exhaled, not with dramatic release, but with steadying air. She reached across and put her hand over his. Her fingers fit into his like something practiced. "Then we answer it," she said together. She Alexander's name twice. The second time it was an anchor. They did not promise grand things, they made practical, small commitments. A joint statement they would release together the next morning. A plan for legal counsel that would protect the truth and also spare unnecessary exposure. And a line Alex would not cross again, no secret payments, no erasures. The commitments were concrete. They were choices that would show up in paperwork and phone calls and witness testimony. They were actions, not slogans. From the terrace edge, Alex watched Vivian's taillights vanish into the avenue. He noticed the way she had used spectacle as a strategy, how she expected him to flinch and sign. He also noticed the way she had faltered at the correction, how a crack of uncertainty had opened for one instant. That instant had allowed him to hold ground. The night did not end with cinematic reconciliation. It closed with accounts to be balanced, statements to be filed, and the quiet processes of lawyers and managers. The emotional shifts had come and gone across the chapter. Jealousy flared, then doubt moved him to cautious calculation. Later resolve formed into public refusal and clarity. Each shift had changed a decision. Each decision carried forward consequences. Outside, a server placed 2 cups of coffee on the low terrace table without asking. The steam braided in the cool air. Alex wrapped both hands around his cup and let the heat ground him. Lena picked up her cup and turned it. A distant car alarm went off. The city rearranged its sounds around them. A note arrived on Alex's phone. A short message from Martin that read, "We have the notarized files on the server. I asked Rosa to hold statements till 9. I will schedule a call with counsel at first light. He read it and felt relief. Action was being taken. Things would be messy, but they would be true. Lena put her cup down and rubbed the pad of her thumb across the healed scar at her wrist, a small habit that had once been private. Alex watched the motion and then mirrored it with his own hand on the table. "We can go back downstairs if you want," he said. "Or we can sit up here until the press stops carrying." He offered neither theatrical apology nor sweeping vow. He offered presence. Lena's lips curved. "Stay up here with me for 10 minutes, she said. "Then we make the statement together." She folded the shawl tighter and looked at him as if checking that this was still the same man she had been building trust with over small things, market lunches, late phone calls, the way he had learned the names of her cousins. He nodded. He reached out and brushed a loose lock of hair behind ear the way someone who had practiced gentleness did. The motion was small. Vivian had wanted a spectacle that forced choices. Alex had chosen a different spectacle, a steady refusal and an admission into a shared consequence. From the rooftop terrace they could see a faint movement below. A figure with a camera turning away, a cluster of people dispersing. The night contracted back into routine. But Alex understood that the consequences would unfold over days and headlines, hearings and interrogations by people who made careers from drama. He also understood that he and Lena had taken an action that would keep their decisions transparent. Vivian's name lingered in Alex's mouth for a moment. Then he set the thought down with a practical plan he had already sent to Martin. He would sleep poorly. He would sign a press release at 9. He would meet lawyers at first light. Those were not romantic things, but they were the terms of a life he meant to keep. When Lena stood, she folded the shawl and tucked the envelope with the old photograph inside her bag. She did not hide it. She kept it as a record. "Keep it," she said, "so we remember what we chose not to do." Her voice was plain, and Alex agreed. They left the terrace together with the door closing behind them. The glass reflected their silhouettes. Two people walking into the restaurant where statements would be written, calls would be made, and a truth would be set in public. Vivian's car was gone, but the city still held her shadow in the headlines that would come. Alex paused at the doorway and put his hand on the handle. He turned to Lena and said, "We answer them together." She nodded and squeezed his fingers before they stepped back into the room. Outside, on the pavement below, a taxi took Vivian away. Inside, Alex handed Rosa and Martin the corrected timeline and asked for copies to be sent to counsel immediately. He signed one administrative line on a piece of paper, not to erase anything, but to allow legal process to proceed. That single signed line concluded the night's immediate choice. Later, when the servers had cleared the last tray and the restaurant went quiet, Alex and Lena walked out through the doors into the cool air. The rooftop terrace was behind them. The city lay ahead. Vivian had not been defeated. She had left with a threat intact. But Alex had made a clear, concrete choice. No more hidden signatures, no more erasing of events. He had chosen truth even when truth might hurt reputation. He had chosen Lena. They hailed a cab without speaking for a few minutes, letting the night's work settle into bone. Lena rested her head briefly against Alex's shoulder, a small act of trust. He felt the weight of the day and the outline of whatever would come next. He did not imagine the future in slogans. He imagined a morning of lawyers and press. He imagined Lena's hand on his in the small waiting room of decisions. When they reached the building, Alex opened the car door and steadied himself with the railing of the stoop. He looked once toward the direction Vivian had left and then locked his jaw in the way of a man who had chosen a standard to live by. He walked Lena up to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. At the elevator, Lena turned and said, "Whatever comes, we face it." Not with signatures to erase, but with what actually happened. Her voice was short and human, the kind of promise that shows up in actions rather than speeches. Alex nodded. He stepped into the elevator with her and took her hand. The doors closed. Outside the building, Vivian's taillights had disappeared into the grid of the city. Inside the elevator, under the soft panel light, Alex and Lena stood with their hands touching, ready to make their next concrete moves together. They did not end with fate or destiny. They ended with a plan, a signed administrative note to council, and a shared decision to meet the consequences together. That night concluded with Alex pressing the elevator button for his floor and saying, "We answer them together," and Lena replying, "Yes, Alexander." The doors opened, and they stepped into the building, moving from spectacle back into the work of living,